Since the announcement of James Gunn's DCU, it was inevitable that we would eventually lead into a Endgame/Infinity War style event for this universe. And this is something that has been echoed by the CEOs of DC Studios themselves. Like, they do plan to do an Infinity War/Endgame style event at some point in this 10-year plan, specifically to conclude the first chapter of this plan in around 2031 or 2032. And I think that I may have actually predicted what this event could possibly be and what the future of the DCU is going to be after this event. Now, first things first, I do think that Endgame/Infinity War is probably the wrong term to use for what this project is going to be, considering that the DCU has only just started, and in 2031 or 2032 we're only going to be around 5 to 7 years into the DCU, meaning that I highly doubt that we're at the end game or the Infinity War of the DCU by that point. In fact, I think that that will be the point in which we finally see the Justice League join forces. That being said, I think that what they're really getting at is that this will be the big event of the universe that we get thus far, meaning like it will just be epic in scale. Now, to fully understand how we get to this event, we first need to start with the current DCU lineup, and the next movie that we're going to be getting in the main DCU saga or Superman saga is going to be Man of Tomorrow. And based off of what we know about the film thus far, obviously Superman and Lex Luthor are working together to defeat Brainiac, and there's also going to be a plethora of other superheroes in this film, like the Justice Gang returning from Superman 1. Also, we're getting the addition of John Stewart Green Lantern, and it's now rumored that Adria Arjona could definitely be playing Wonder Woman or Maxima. It's also being speculated that Eva de Dominci is also in the running for Wonder Woman or Maxima as well, meaning that either Adria Arjona is Wonder Woman and she's Maxima, or Eva is actually Wonder Woman and Adria is in fact going to be our Maxima. And that's not even all of the roles that we know are going to be in this film. So long story short, this film is shaping up to be an ensemble film. And with a threat as big as Brainiac, I think that this makes complete sense. And with all the heroes appearing in this film, I do think it's safe to say that this will be a pseudo Justice League movie, or definitely a stepping stone / setup for the Justice League in the DCU. Moving on, another major focal point of this film is going to be Lex Luthor, because I do think that him aiding Superman and performing these quote-unquote good works will allow him to actually get out of prison. And this is something that I've said before in other videos. I genuinely think that since we see that he's on a redemption arc in Peacemaker Season 2 and he's already working closely with the government even while being behind bars, I do think that saving the world from Brainiac alongside Superman and the other heroes is going to be enough to get him out of prison. And as I have also mentioned in the past, I do think that they're doing this specifically to position Lex Luthor to be president of the DCU, or president in the DCU, I mean. Now again, I don't think that the president thing happens in Man of Tomorrow. I think that Man of Tomorrow specifically ends with Lex Luthor just being free of all of his past crimes. That being said, this brings us to the next project, which I do think that Lex's presidential campaign will be showcased in, and also which will be another stepping stone for the DCU Justice League, and that is a Justice League International TV show. Now, as I've mentioned before, Justice League International is something that James Gunn has consistently teased since he stepped in the door at DC. So I definitely do think that it's something that's cooking behind the scenes, especially when you consider the fact that we have a lot of the members of the Justice League International already in the DCU or confirmed to appear in the DCU. Now, the reason why I think that a TV show is more likely for this project over a full-fledged movie is because of the fact that the Justice League International is a subset of the original main Justice League. And in the DCU, even though they're already kind of doing unorthodox storytelling, I do think that it's just unlikely that they introduce a subset of the Justice League on the big screen before they showcase the actual Justice League on the big screen. Now, I just want to clarify that I could be completely wrong about this. They could in fact make a Justice League International movie, and it wouldn't necessarily be a horrible idea. It would just be, like I said, unorthodox and kind of weird. But nonetheless, in this project, I think that two things will be the major focus. I think that it will showcase Lex Luthor's campaign for president, and I also think that the heroes that we see in Man of Tomorrow, including the Justice Gang, will come together in this project to form the Justice League International, and I think that characters like Batman will also show up as well. As far as the likes of Superman and Supergirl, I don't think that they will be quick to join the team because A, they weren't on the initial Justice League International roster in the comics, and B, because of the fact that the Justice League International will still likely be owned by Maxwell Lord, I think that Superman will be less adamant to join a team that's ran by the government. As far as Batman is concerned, I also think that Batman would agree with Superman on this. However, I think that the only reason why Batman will join initially is because of the fact that he won't know that it's being ran by Maxwell Lord in secret. And that would be something that would be lore accurate, considering that when the Justice League International first formed, Maxwell Lord pulled a lot of strings behind the shadows so that they would eventually join together. Now, as far as the release window for this project, I do think that we could get this project in late 2028 or early 2029, maybe even late 2029. And I say that because I think that this project will be very key in establishing this Justice League movie that we're going to get as the quote-unquote endgame level Infinity War style event. So by 2029 in the DCU, we now have Lex Luthor basically in full control of the government because he will now be the president. We also have a government-ran Justice League, and the tension between heroes and metahumans will probably be at an all-time high. Now, before we continue on the Justice League side of things, I want to deviate back over to something that was introduced in the likes of Peacemaker Season 2, and that is none other than Salvation. Now, for those of you who don't know, in the comics, Salvation is this planet that is basically in a different dimension and is used to house a lot of superpowered villains. However, in the comics, this planet was also used by the likes of Darkseid not only to train parademons, but also to harvest new god technology or technology for Apocalypse. Because of this, there's all types of creatures and technology on this planet that the government of Earth didn't properly vet because of the fact that they just wanted somewhere to put these villains. Now, James Gunn has come out since and said that Darkseid isn't going to be the main big bad of the DCU, so don't expect Salvation to have any ties to Darkseid, but we are in fact getting a Mr. Miracle New God show that is going to feature Darkseid and is set in the DCU, so I do think that it's possible that Darkseid could have involvement with Salvation. Now again, this doesn't mean that he'll be the big bad of the first chapter, and that's not what I'm saying in this video at all, but it does just plant a seed for an eventual Darkseid big bad thing that could happen later on. Moving on, the main reason why Salvation is going to be very important, especially while Lex Luthor is the president, is because I really do believe that Lex Luthor during his presidential tenure will be visiting Salvation to communicate with these villains that are placed on this planet. And I think that every villain that we see in the DCU so far is going to be placed on Salvation at the end of their respective projects. So for example, Sinestro and Lanterns, at the end of Lanterns, if he's defeated, I think that he will be sent to Salvation. Brainiac and Man of Tomorrow, I think that once he's defeated, he will be placed on Salvation. In Peacemaker Season 2, they mentioned a lot of breakouts on Arkham Asylum. I think that a lot of those villains will also be shipped off to Salvation, and that includes the likes of Deathstroke and Bane, who are rumored to be getting a team-up movie in the DCU, and I think that that movie will actually showcase them teaming up on Salvation to survive amongst the other villains. That being said, the main villain that I think that Lex Luthor will be building a rapport with while they're on Salvation is Brainiac. This is a thing that's happened in the comics before. After Superman has defeated Brainiac, Lex Luthor has dissected Brainiac and tried to find answers out of Brainiac because of how intelligent he is. I think that this exact thing could take place in the DCU, however, it will just happen through the guise of Lex Luthor communicating with villains on Salvation to try and find out what their plans are to help better the US government. However, in secret, Lex Luthor could in fact be building relationships with these villains so that in the future he could utilize them for his will. Now we set the stage for Justice League 1, which is going to be this quote-unquote endgame / Infinity War style event. Now, to truly understand this movie, we first need to go all the way back to Lantern Season 1, in which it's been stated since this project was announced that it's going to be Hal Jordan and John Stewart investigating a Dark Earth mystery that ties into the overarching story of the DCU. Now, based on what this mystery could be, I think that it has huge implications for what this Justice League movie could be as well. And with characters like Sinestro already being confirmed for the show, major actor for the show Garrett Dillahunt teasing that he could potentially be playing Black Hand, as well as Paul Ben Victor as Atrocitus. And even though in the trailer that we saw, we did see both of these two characters and they did look like regular humans, I do think that this could be them just playing games with us, and it could just actually be disposable footage that they threw in the trailer to throw us completely off of the scent of what's actually happening. I did also see some theories that this could just be them shapeshifting, but they don't have shapeshifting powers, and I doubt that they would be using shapeshifting technology because they don't ever do that in the comics. It could be a new thing that they added, but again, I just think it's unlikely. That being said, again, I do think it's way more likely that they're just pulling an Infinity War where they edited the Hulk into the trailer, but when we actually saw the movie, he wasn't in that shot at all, and it was actually just the Hulkbuster. I could definitely see those brief glimpses of Paul Ben Victor as just throwaway scenes that they utilized to just showcase him as this unknown character so that when we actually see him as Atrocitus, it's really surprising. There's also the fact that Garrett Dillahunt straight up showcased him getting fitted for his costume, and if you look at the outline of his suit, his right arm is free, but everything else is covered up, and that's the exact same design as Black Hand. So if Black Hand and Atrocitus actually are in the Lanterns TV show, what I think that they'll be doing is adapting Secret Origins, in which we will see John Stewart and Hal Jordan basically investigating the Blackest Night theory, or prophecy, and we'll also see flashbacks of Hal Jordan's time when he was younger, investigating the same exact thing with Sinestro. However, that is not all there is to it. I do think this is going to be an amalgamation of multiple storylines, and that's because I do think that Hal Jordan will in fact be Parallax in Lanterns as well. And I think that this will also tie into how Sinestro plays a role in the series as well, because I think that Sinestro will be the one behind the scenes playing with Hal Jordan's composure as he slowly evolves into Parallax as the series progresses, which again would be lore accurate and pulled directly from the Jeff Johns run, the same way that Secret Origins is. This would tie into Lanterns because once they discover that this Blackest Night theory is the thing that's actually happening and something that they need to stop, this is when Parallax Hal Jordan, who's already turned evil at this point, will turn back to the light and sacrifice himself, ultimately leaving John Stewart alone as the main Green Lantern. This could also help to set up the likes of Kyle Rayner, because after Hal Jordan dies as Parallax in the comics, we do get Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern, so hopefully they do that in the DCU as well, and maybe they send John Stewart to go find him. Another storyline that I think could be tying into this season of Lanterns is also Justice League: The New Frontier, specifically the role of the entity known as the Center. And that's because what I think is going to happen is that this entity will be taking control of this town with the aid of Black Hand. And that's where all this conspiracy, weird vibe energy is going to stem from in this town that Hal and John are investigating. So I don't think that the Center will be a one-to-one adaptation like how it is in The New Frontier. I think it'll more so be an amalgamation of the Blackest Night prophecy with Black Hand, and also him utilizing the Center as basically the avatar to summon Necron into the earthly plane. Another possibility is that Sinestro could be using Parallax to influence the Center or this entity with fear that also helps to lead into Hal Jordan's turn into Parallax, and also helps it aid Black Hand in the Blackest Night prophecy. It's basically going to be this pyramid scheme with Sinestro, Black Hand, and the Center, if that makes sense. So when we get to Justice League: The New Frontier, we'll actually see the culmination of this Blackest Night event, in which we get like an amalgamation of the Center, Necron, and all the Black Lanterns basically coming to Earth to fight the Justice League. And this is where we'll have to see all of the heroes band together and even ignore the words of the governments of the world, including Lex Luthor, who is now the president, to stop this threat. And this will lead into us getting the full-fledged Justice League. Heroes that aren't funded by the government, that aren't told what to do by the government, heroes that operate under their own accord and do what they need to do to make sure that the world is a better place. Another thing that I could also see happening in this movie, considering the fact that it may pull heavy inspiration from Justice League: The New Frontier, which has also been teased by DC Studios and James Gunn, is that we could also potentially get a Green Lantern Rebirth adaptation in this movie as well. And that's because in the original New Frontier storyline, it's basically a Hal Jordan origin story, because this is the first time we see Hal Jordan of this story suit up as Green Lantern, and he actually joins the fight to save the day against the Center. Not only would it be an amazing payoff to see Hal Jordan, who died as Parallax, return as his younger self in a Green Lantern Rebirth fashion like he does in the comics, to see him redeem himself and save the day is something that would also be extremely rewarding to Hal Jordan and Green Lantern fans all across, because of how poorly Hal Jordan has been treated in live action over the years. Because of the fact that Lantern Season 1 is dropping in 2026 and this Justice League movie isn't coming until 2031 or maybe even 2032, I could definitely see them squeezing in a Lantern Season 2 in between 2026 and 2031, and having us follow Hal Jordan in his time as the Spectre to fully flesh out his full return in the Justice League movie. Now again, I want to reiterate that the Hal Jordan portion of this is pure speculation and wishful thinking on my end, because I really do think that wasting Hal Jordan in Lantern Season 1 and killing him off and doing nothing else with him would be a disservice to not only Hal Jordan himself, but the Green Lantern mythos, considering how important he is to that side of DC. And I think that what I just described in this video is the perfect way to rectify this. But nonetheless, I do think that a Blackest Night / the Center kind of fight in Justice League 1 is definitely what this DCU Endgame Endgame level event is going to be, because not only does it match the epicness of a Endgame level event because you have Necron and the Black Lanterns fighting the Justice League, because of the fact that at this point we already would have seen a bunch of heroes, it's also a really good amalgamation movie that showcases a plethora of characters from the Justice League, maybe even the Teen Titans and other teams. And it could end with the Justice League Unlimited being established more so than just like a 7-man team. I think that there will be a core 7, but I do think that this movie will end with a larger Justice League roster similar to what we got in the DCAU. Now, as far as the DCU future going forward, I think that a couple of things can happen. As far as the thing that I'm sure is probably going to happen, I do think that the seeds have been planted for the Legion of Doom. If you look at the DCU from top to bottom, we've basically seen every Legion of Doom member. We've seen Lex Luthor, we've seen Brainiac and Man of Tomorrow, we got Sinestro and Lanterns, we saw Gorilla Grodd and Creature Commandos. Ra's al Ghul is probably going to be the main villain of Brave and the Bold. Deathstroke and Bane are confirmed for this universe. Cersei, the Wonder Woman villain, also showed up in Creature Commandos. Then you have the Superman clone Ultraman, who is basically just going to be Bizarro because of the fact that Lex Luthor called him a stupid clone. That's just something that is always attributed to Bizarro. And he probably went to Bizarro World at the end of Superman when he went through the black hole. So again, I think that this team of villains is definitely something that's being set up. That being said, after the events of Justice League 1, because of the fact that Lex Luthor is now going to be trying to regain power over the metahumans, this is when he will start to enforce his laws of metahumans only being able to operate if they operate through him or the government. And like I've said countless times, I think that this will lead into a 1-to-1 or nearly 1-to-1 adaptation of Superman Batman Public Enemies as a world's finest movie in the DCU, in which they team up and stop Lex Luthor. Because of Lex Luthor literally committing treason and going against the entire country of the United States, this will throw Lex Luthor himself on salvation with the rest of those villains that I had mentioned earlier he's already been communicating with and finding out information from. Now, this is where things get very interesting, because this is what I genuinely think that Justice League 2 is going to be. Lex Luthor, now on salvation, will obviously be in cahoots with the rest of the other villains, and this is where the Legion of Doom will officially form. Because of the Legion of Doom having the likes of Lex Luthor and Brainiac as their most intelligent characters, I think that they easily escape salvation with the combined efforts of those two and the potential new god/apocalyptic technology that exists on this planet already, and eventually make their way back to Earth. Now, at this point, Lex Luthor has abandoned trying to be friends with the government, and he has fully embraced villain mode. So now we're getting like full-on Legion of Doom headquarters. They're in secret and they're hiding, very similar to like what we've seen in the comics and in the DCAU. During this time, this is where Lex Luthor will frame the Justice League and have it seem as if they attacked the government with the Watchtower, and this could be completely copied from the DCAU, or they could just do a similar storyline in which he frames the Justice League and eventually forces the governments of the world to think that the Justice League are evil and have them sent off to salvation. Now, because of the fact that Lex Luthor probably anticipated this, I think that Lex Luthor is smart enough to have rewired some interdimensional travel system so that when the Justice League gets there, they can't actually escape, or at least get back to Earth if they try to escape. And it would make sense for Lex Luthor to know how to do this because he's been in contact with the likes of Brainiac, who is implied to have created the QUC in Peacemaker Season 2, and also just is a 12th level intellect and would have access to this type of knowledge. So now you effectively have the Justice League stranded and you have the Legion of Doom on Earth, and now they can pretty much do whatever they want. However, this is where Lex Luthor's plan will backfire, because when the Justice League try to escape with the likes of intelligent minds like Batman or Mr. Terrific, they will actually end up going to Earth 3. And for those of you who don't know, this Earth is where the Crime Syndicate resides, which is basically an alternate version of the Justice League that is completely evil and has the likes of the real Ultraman, Owlman, Superwoman, Johnny Quick, Power Ring, etc. Now, the reason why this will be a backfired plan on Lex Luthor's behalf is because of the fact that when the Justice League actually gets here, they will fight the Crime Syndicate and they will lose this first encounter, leading to them effectively being imprisoned on Earth 3. And because of the fact that the Crime Syndicate are just evil, tyrannical dictators, they will leave the Justice League there and head to their Earth to try and conquer that world specifically. And this will be something that Lex Luthor didn't anticipate because of the fact that he had no idea that he would be sending them to a world with an evil version of themselves. So when the Crime Syndicates show up to the actual Earth, they will take it over and they will pretty much enslave the Legion of Doom and the other villains and have them work under them in their criminal empire. Meanwhile, back on Earth 3, the Justice League will still be imprisoned. However, the Lex Luthor of that world, who is actually a hero and a member of that version of the Justice League, will help our Justice League actually escape and head back to Earth to not only defeat Lex Luthor and the Legion of Doom, but also liberate the likes of Earth-3 from the crime syndicate's evil reign. This movie would basically be a loose adaptation of the event Forever Evil, with some inspiration from DC animated movie Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. And the reason why I think that this is something that could very possibly happen is because of the fact that I highly doubt that James Gunn only introduced the QUC and the idea of all of these other alternate realities specifically and only for Salvation. I think that it's very possible that Salvation is the main thing that they want to do at the beginning of this, but I think that opening the door to have these alternate realities only sets up the crime syndicate in Earth-3, especially when you consider the fact that we've already heard the Ultraman archetype in the likes of Superman. Obviously, I think that that's going to be Bizarro and not the real Ultraman, but the fact that he is Ultraman or dubbed as Ultraman in Superman establishes that there is an Ultraman archetype out there, and I really do believe that that is on purpose. Another thing that helps this argument is the fact that Justice League Crisis on Two Earths is a very popular Justice League animated movie and also features the crime syndicate, and James Gunn has already come out and said that he is a fan of DC animation, and introducing the crime syndicate to the DCU could beautifully set up the next Justice League movie, or the third Justice League film I should say, which could be a copy and paste adaptation of Tower of Babel, in which you have the Justice League face off against the Legion of Doom that have the leaked versions of Batman's contingency plans. And that way you have Batman be completely justified in creating these plans because of the fact that in the last movie, we literally just saw them go up against an evil version of themselves. So obviously Justice League 2 would end with the Legion of Doom going back into hiding and not actually being found by the government so that they can come back in this movie and wreak havoc via Batman's own plans. And the beauty of it all is that you could actually have Ra's al Ghul be the main villain of this, or the leader of the Legion of Doom in this sense, because of the fact that he will be the one who had attained Batman's contingency plans the same way it actually happens in the comics, and that makes sense considering that he's being set up in Brave and the Bold via Damian Wayne. Now again, I just want to reiterate to you guys, this is all speculation. This entire video is just me theorizing based off of things that the DCU has already kind of put forth. I am completely confident that what I said is going to happen in Justice League 1 will probably be very close to what happens in the actual movie. Like, I do genuinely think that whatever we see in Lanterns will ultimately come back to be the big threat in Justice League 1. I really stand on that. But as far as it being like Blackest Night mixed with the Center, that is all up in the air. It could be something else. It could be something similar, or it could be exactly that. I don't know. But ultimately, everything that I said thus far in this video is what I think that the first two chapters of the DCU will truly consist of, and I think that once we get post Tower of Babel and contingency plans with the Justice League, that's when we'll start to get into the more higher level Justice League stories where we see characters like Darkseid and maybe even the Anti-Monitor and get into actual crisis events. Because at that point, the DCU will be very far along, maybe like 8 to 10 years in, maybe even 12 years in by the time we get there. So I could definitely see them going into an actual crisis event that will have some long-lasting effects on the universe, where some of our favorite characters may even die or get rebooted. But overall, ladies and gentlemen, that is what I think that the DCU Endgame is going to be for at least the first chapter. I think that, like I said, the first Justice League movie will definitely stem off of what happens in Lanterns, and my prediction right now is that it's going to be some type of amalgamation of Blackest Night and the Center, maybe even mixed with a little bit of Parallax, and it will showcase Hal Jordan coming back in his prime in a Green Lantern Rebirth fashion, in a Justice League The New Frontier style story that reunites all of the main heroes and establishes the Justice League Unlimited in the DCU. Let me know what you guys think about this theory in the comments. Does it make sense? Do you have your own theories? Let me know everything that you feel about this video down below. And also, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and also hit the hype button if you have that feature available. And as always, it's been your boy K the God. I'll catch you boys in the next one.